What happens when a seemingly perfect life hides secrets too dark to imagine? This is the tragic tale of Lana Reeves, a professor who lost everything in a whirlwind of betrayal and tragedy. Lana Reeves appeared to have it all: a successful career as a respected college professor, a beautiful home, and a seemingly devoted husband, Hobart. But beneath the surface, Lana's life was far from ideal. At 43, she felt trapped in a loveless marriage. Hobart, a businessman always traveling for work, left Lana feeling invisible and lonely. Their conversations were mechanical, focused on bills and logistics, devoid of intimacy or warmth. Hobart's absence didn't just mean physical distance, it created an emotional chasm that Lana felt unable to bridge. Nights stretched endlessly in their silent home, where the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Memories of their early days together filled with laughter and dreams seemed like stories from another lifetime. Lana often found herself staring at the walls, wondering if this was all her life would ever be. To cope with the emptiness, Lana immersed herself in her work. She arrived at the college early and stayed late, piling on responsibilities to keep her mind occupied. She became the go-to mentor for students, known for her dedication and approachability. Her colleagues admired her, describing her as the epitome of professionalism. Yet, behind the closed door of her office, she would often let her guard down, sighing heavily as the weight of her unfulfilled life bore down on her. The campus itself offered a stark contrast to her home life. It buzzed with energy, filled with students bustling between classes, chatting about their dreams and ambitions. Lana couldn't help but feel envious of their youthful exuberance. Their carefree conversations about weekend plans and budding romances reminded her of a version of herself she had long buried. Despite her attempts to keep her feelings in check, they began to seep into her interactions. She noticed how her students admired her, the way they hung on to her every word during lectures, the appreciative smiles when she stayed late to help them understand complex theories. She brushed off these feelings initially, chalking them up to a natural sense of pride in her work. But over time, they started to fill a void she didn't even realize was growing deeper. Among her students, one stood out: Harry, an 18-year-old student, marks a turning point. Harry's charisma and charm caught Lana's attention during an innocent office hour meeting. His compliments about her teaching style stirred something in her that she hadn't felt in years. Suddenly, Lana began to see herself through Harry's youthful, admiring eyes. Harry's energy was magnetic. He didn't just ask questions, he listened intently, leaning forward with an eagerness that made her feel seen. It wasn't long before Lana found herself looking forward to these conversations, her days punctuated by the thrill of his visits. His compliments grew more personal. "You've got such a unique way of explaining things, it's inspiring," he'd say, leaving her flustered yet exhilarated. At first, Lana convinced herself these exchanges were harmless. She rationalized her growing interest in Harry as a natural connection between a teacher and a bright, engaged student. But her actions began to tell another story. She started planning her outfits with more care, choosing skirts that showed off her legs or blouses that hinted at her figure. She spent extra time on her makeup, making sure her lipstick was just right and her eyeliner subtle but striking. Their interactions became layered with unspoken tension. During lectures, Lana noticed Harry watching her, his gaze lingering just a moment too long. She'd catch herself smiling more, her voice softening when she addressed him. Once, during a lecture on Renaissance literature, Harry raised his hand to share a thought. "It's like the characters are desperate to break free from their roles," he said, his eyes meeting hers. The double meaning wasn't lost on Lana, and she felt a blush creep up her neck. Things took a more deliberate turn one afternoon when Harry lingered after class. The other students had filed out, and the room was quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Harry approached her desk, his usual confidence tinged with something softer. "I've been thinking about what you said last week," he began, referring to a discussion about finding purpose. "It really made me question some things about myself." Lana nodded, her heart racing. "That's what great literature does, it makes us reflect." Harry hesitated, then smiled. "You're not just a great professor. You make people feel like they matter." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Lana felt her pulse quicken, and for a moment, she was unsure how to respond. She managed a soft, "Thank you, Harry. That means a lot." Their eyes met, and the moment stretched out. Harry's gaze dropped briefly to her lips, then back to her eyes. Lana's breath hitched as she realized the direction things were heading. Before she could think better of it, she reached out, brushing a hand against his arm. It was a small gesture, but it carried the weight of her unspoken desires. The encounter ended there, but the line had been crossed. Lana spent the rest of the day replaying the moment, her emotions a mix of exhilaration and guilt. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, torn between the thrill of feeling alive again and the nagging voice in her head reminding her of the boundaries she'd just crossed. Over the next few weeks, their interactions grew bolder. Harry began stopping by her office under the pretense of needing help with assignments, but their conversations rarely stayed on academic topics. They talked about their dreams, their fears, and the things that made them feel alive. Lana found herself opening up to him in ways she hadn't with anyone in years. One afternoon, as they sat in her office, Harry leaned in slightly. "You deserve to be happy, you know. Really happy." Lana felt her breath catch. "Harry, she began, but he interrupted her. "You don't have to say anything," he said, his voice soft but insistent. "I just wanted you to know that." The tension in the room was palpable. Lana's mind raced, but she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward him. The lines between right and wrong blurred further, and she realized she was on the verge of stepping into uncharted territory, a decision that would set the stage for everything that followed. Over the next few weeks, Lana's demeanor continued to change. She became more animated during lectures, more engaged with her students. Her colleagues noticed her newfound energy, attributing it to a second wind in her career. But for Lana, it was something far more complex. She was caught in a whirlwind of emotions, teetering on the edge of a decision that would alter the course of her life forever. What began with Harry soon spiraled into a dangerous pattern. Emboldened by the thrill of their secret, Lana sought similar connections with other students. She told herself she was simply fostering a deeper connection, but in reality, she was chasing a fleeting sense of vitality. The thrill of her secret encounters with Harry emboldened Lana in ways she hadn't anticipated. What began as a singular, electrifying connection soon became a pattern. She started noticing other students in ways she hadn't before. Each one represented something different to her: a sense of adventure, a reminder of her youth, or simply the ability to feel desired. These interactions weren't just about physical connection, they became a way for Lana to reclaim the sense of vitality she felt her life had lost. Her process became almost methodical. Lana became adept at identifying students who seemed vulnerable or impressionable. She'd start with a casual conversation, dropping compliments, or asking about their aspirations. Over time, these interactions became more personal. A lingering touch on the shoulder, a compliment that felt just a bit too intimate, An offer to grab coffee under the guise of discussing their work. Each move was calculated, though Lana told herself it was innocent. Her office became a sanctuary for these encounters, a place where boundaries dissolved and reality blurred. She justified her actions by convincing herself that she was helping these students in ways no one else could. They're adults, she reasoned. They can make their own choices. But beneath the surface, guilt simmered, only to be drowned out by the intoxicating thrill of her double life. Some students developed genuine feelings for her, interpreting her attention as a sign of something deeper. Others felt manipulated, sensing that they were just another pawn in a game they didn't fully understand. But most stayed silent, unwilling to jeopardize their futures or face the humiliation of exposing the truth. Lana's actions left a trail of emotional destruction that she was either unwilling or unable to see. The students she discarded once her interest waned were left to grapple with feelings of rejection and confusion. Rumors began to circulate on campus, whispered conversations about favoritism and inappropriate behavior. But Lana, adept at maintaining her polished exterior, dismissed these as baseless gossip. Meanwhile, Jaden, a quiet and observant student, noticed the pattern. Jaden was different from the others. He was introverted, but sharp, someone who preferred to observe from the sidelines rather than engage directly. For weeks, he'd watched Lana's interactions, noting the way her demeanor changed around certain students. At first, he thought he was imagining it. But as the weeks turned into months, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Jaden began documenting his observations. He carried a small notebook where he jotted down dates, times, and details of Lana's interactions. When he overheard a conversation between two students discussing special treatment in her class, his suspicions were confirmed. Determined to uncover the truth, he started collecting more concrete evidence. His motivations were complex. On one hand, he felt a sense of moral obligation to expose what he saw as a gross abuse of power. On the other, he was driven by a more personal desire and need to assert control in a world where he often felt invisible. By gathering evidence against Lana, Jaden found a way to elevate himself from the shadows. One afternoon, Jaden followed Lana as she left campus and saw her meeting a student in a nearby cafe. He positioned himself at a distance, snapping photos with his phone. Another time, he lingered near her office, recording snippets of conversations through the slightly ajar door. His collection grew, photos, audio clips, and eventually, a video captured through a crack in the blinds that left no room for ambiguity. With each new piece of evidence, Jaden's sense of power grew. He told himself he was doing the right thing, but there was an undeniable thrill in holding someone else's secret in his hands. Still, he hesitated to act. What would happen if he exposed Lana? Would anyone believe him? Would it change anything? The tension between Lana's double life and Jaden's quiet investigation reached a breaking point when one of Lana's discarded students, Peter, confronted her. "You said I was special," he accused, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. Lana, caught off guard, struggled to respond. The confrontation ended with Peter storming out of her office, leaving her shaken. Unbeknownst to Lana, Peter's outburst didn't go unnoticed. Jaden, who happened to be nearby, overheard the exchange. He added Peter's name to his growing list of witnesses, sensing that the time to act was approaching. As Lana's web of deception grew more tangled, so did the stakes. And while she remained oblivious to the storm brewing around her, the consequences of her actions loomed closer with each passing day. Jaden's collected evidence, videos, screenshots, and detailed accounts eventually reached Hobart via email. The subject line, "Your wife's secret life," shattered Hobbert's world. Hobbert was in a hotel room reviewing contracts when the email notification appeared. The title stopped him cold. He hesitated, then clicked. The grainy footage began to play, Lana laughing with a student, then a close-up of her leaning into Harry in what was clearly an intimate moment. As the video clips rolled on, Hobbert felt his stomach churn. Screenshots followed messages exchanged late at night, detailing meetings, coffee breaks, and photos of Lana at cafes with various students. The devastation felt like a physical blow. For 20 years, he had trusted her. Now, he was staring at a betrayal that rewrote their entire history. Rage boiled beneath his shock. He slammed his laptop shut and stood, his breath heavy and labored. His thoughts spiraled. Was everything a lie? Was he simply blind to how far she'd drifted from him? Hobbert grabbed his car keys, rage overtaking reason. His mind raced as he drove toward their house. Over an hour-long drive, his anger festered. Betrayal and humiliation sat heavy in his chest. By the time he arrived, his emotions had escalated. Lana returned home hours later to find Hobbert pacing the living room, red-faced and seething. Without a word, he thrust his phone toward her. The paused video of her kiss with Harry was unmistakable. "What is this, Lana?" he spat. Lana's face drained of color. Her mind raced for an explanation, but nothing came. "Hobbert, Save it," he roared, his voice reverberating through the room. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The humiliation? The betrayal? How long? How many?" Tears welled in Lana's eyes. It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to get so out of hand." Hobbert's anger only grew. He recounted every damning detail from the email, listing off names and events as though they were daggers. Lana, cornered, tried to plead, but her words were drowned out by his fury. "You threw away everything," he yelled. "For what? A fleeting thrill? Do you even care what you've done to me, to us?" Lana sobbed, her knees giving way. "Hobbert, please, I never meant to hurt you. I was lonely, I didn't think." "Lonely?" Hobbert hissed. "You think that excuses this? You humiliated me. You jeopardized everything." The argument escalated. Words turned sharper, more venomous. Hobbert slammed his fists on the counter, his body trembling with rage. Lana tried to step closer, to calm him, but he recoiled. Finally, Hobbert snapped. Overwhelmed with a mix of grief and fury, he lunged. The moment unfolded in a blur. Lana stumbling backward, a lamp crashing to the floor. Hobbert didn't realize what he had done until Lana lay motionless on the carpet. He froze, his breath catching in his throat. Blood seeped into the rug, and Lana's chest remained still. "Lana," he whispered hoarsely. The weight of his actions crashed over him. He dropped to his knees, shaking her shoulders. "Lana, please. I didn't mean." Tears streamed down his face as he realized it was too late. The house fell into a heavy silence, broken only by Hobbert's anguished sobs. His life, their life, lay shattered before him. But the consequences of this single, tragic moment were only beginning to unfold. While tragedy unfolded at Lana's home, chaos erupted on campus. Jaden's collected evidence began circulating among the students, spreading like wildfire through text messages, social media, and whispered conversations. The revelations ignited a storm of emotions: shock, anger, humiliation, and, for some, shame. Four students in particular, Peter, Jesse, Michael, and Ryan, found themselves at the epicenter of the scandal, each grappling with the fallout in their own way. Peter was furious. He had been one of Lana's favorites, and while their encounters had left him confused and emotionally vulnerable, he hadn't anticipated the betrayal he would feel seeing his name and face linked to others. To him, Lana had promised something unique, something exclusive. Now, those promises felt like lies, and his anger simmered just beneath the surface, threatening to erupt. Jesse, on the other hand, was consumed by shame. He had kept quiet about his involvement, telling himself that it was mutual and harmless. But as the evidence circulated and his classmates began to look at him differently, he felt exposed. The shame weighed heavily on him, making him avoid eye contact and skip classes. He felt like the entire campus was judging him. Michael and Ryan, meanwhile, reacted with a mix of confusion and fear. They had both believed their interactions with Lana were harmless flirtations, perhaps even empowering. But now, the scandal had reduced them to pawns in a much larger, more damaging narrative. The weight of being part of something so public and sordid left them reeling. The tension between these four students came to a head one afternoon behind the gym. Peter, unable to contain his anger, confronted Michael and Ryan, accusing them of being complicit in the scandal and contributing to the humiliation he now faced. "You knew she was doing this with others, didn't you?" Peter spat, his voice shaking with rage. Michael held up his hands defensively. "I didn't know anything, man. I thought it was different." "Different?" Peter scoffed. "We were all just her toys. Don't pretend like you didn't know." Ryan tried to intervene. "This isn't helping. We're all victims here." "Victims?" Peter's voice rose. "Speak for yourself. I actually cared about her. I trusted her. And now I'm a joke because of all of you." The argument escalated quickly, drawing a small crowd of onlookers. Words turned into shoves, and the tension reached a boiling point. Peter, blinded by rage, lunged at Michael, and the two began to grapple. Ryan tried to pull them apart, but Jesse, overwhelmed by his own frustration, joined in, and soon the scene devolved into chaos. A security guard, alerted by the commotion, tried to intervene, but by the time he arrived, the confrontation had spiraled out of control. Fists flew, and someone grabbed a metal pipe from a nearby construction site. The fight turned violent, the rage and frustration of each student fueling the chaos. In the midst of the melee, Ryan was struck in the head and collapsed. The sight of blood shocked the others into a brief pause, but it wasn't enough to stop the violence completely. By the time campus police arrived, the scene was one of devastation. Two students lay unconscious, while Peter and Michael were bloodied and bruised. The gym area, once a quiet space for sports and recreation, had become a battleground. The onlookers who had initially been too stunned or scared to intervene now scattered, leaving behind a grim silence. The aftermath of the fight sent shockwaves through the campus community. News of the altercation spread as quickly as Jaden's evidence had, and soon, local media picked up the story. The headlines were sensational: Professor's Scandal Sparks Violence at Local College and Love and Betrayal Turn Deadly. Parents flooded the college administration with calls, demanding answers and assurances about their children's safety. Faculty members were forced to confront the scandal head-on, holding emergency meetings to address the growing unrest among students. Meanwhile, counseling services were overwhelmed as students sought support to process the events. The 4 students involved in the fight faced immediate disciplinary action. Peter and Michael were arrested for their roles in the violence, while Jesse and Ryan were hospitalized. Ryan's injuries were severe, leaving him in critical condition. The weight of what had happened hung heavily over everyone involved, with guilt and regret seeping into every corner of the campus. As for Jaden, the student whose evidence had set these events in motion, he found himself caught in the crossfire of opinions. Some saw him as a whistleblower, someone brave enough to expose a corrupt system. Others blamed him for the chaos, accusing him of seeking attention or power. Jaden himself felt a mix of emotions, satisfaction that the truth had come out, but also guilt for the unintended consequences of his actions. The college administration launched an internal investigation, but the damage had already been done. Lana's name became synonymous with scandal, her actions overshadowing her years of academic contributions. For the students and faculty, the campus no longer felt like a safe or inspiring place, it had become a symbol of betrayal and tragedy. The ripple effects of the violence extended beyond the campus. Parents questioned the institution's ability to protect its students, alumni distanced themselves from their alma mater, and prospective students reconsidered their applications. The college, once a thriving academic community, now struggled to maintain its reputation. The incident behind the gym became a turning point for everyone involved. For Peter, Michael, Jesse, and Ryan, it marked the end of their time at the college and the beginning of a long, painful journey toward accountability and healing. For Jaden, it was a harsh lesson in the power and responsibility that comes with exposing the truth. And for the rest of the campus, it was a grim reminder of how unchecked emotions and hidden secrets can spiral into tragedy. The aftermath of the tragedy rippled through the community, leaving scars that would never fully heal. Hubbard, overwhelmed with guilt and grief, turned himself into the authorities within hours of Lana's death. His confession was detailed and anguished, painting a picture of a man consumed by betrayal, heartbreak, and rage. The media seized upon the story, turning it into a nationwide sensation. Headlines blared with sensationalized titles like "Betrayal and Bloodshed," the scandal that rocked a college town. Hubbard's confession marked the beginning of a legal and media frenzy. Lana's scandal became the subject of endless debates on news outlets, social media platforms, and talk shows. Some painted Lana as a victim, a woman trapped in a loveless marriage, searching for validation and connection. Others condemned her as a manipulative predator, exploiting her students for her own selfish needs. The public's opinions were divided, but one thing was clear: the scandal had struck a nerve. At the college, the fallout was immediate and far-reaching. Parents, furious and concerned, demanded answers from the administration. How had such misconduct gone unnoticed for so long? What safeguards would be put in place to ensure it never happened again? The administration, caught off guard by the scale of the scandal, scrambled to implement damage control measures. Emergency town hall meetings were held, where the president of the college faced a barrage of questions and accusations. Counseling services were overwhelmed as students grappled with the emotional fallout. For those directly involved with Lana, the scandal brought feelings of guilt, confusion, and shame. Many of the students she had targeted struggled to reconcile their memories of her as a mentor with the reality of her actions. Some sought therapy to process their experiences, while others chose to leave the college entirely, unable to face the whispers and stares that followed them everywhere they went. The college's reputation took a massive hit. Alumni distanced themselves, donors pulled funding, and prospective students reconsidered their applications. The administration launched an internal investigation, vowing to identify and address the systemic failures that had allowed Lana's behavior to continue unchecked. Policies were overhauled, and mandatory training sessions on ethics and boundaries were introduced for faculty and staff. But for many, these measures felt too little, too late. Hobbart's trial became the centerpiece of the scandal's aftermath. The courtroom was packed with reporters, family members, and curious onlookers. Hobbart's defense team portrayed him as a broken man, pushed to the brink by his wife's betrayal. They emphasized his clean record, his dedication to his marriage, and his immediate remorse following Lana's death. Character witnesses described him as a kind, hard-working man who had simply reached his breaking point. The prosecution, however, painted a very different picture. They focused on the brutality of Lana's death, arguing that no amount of betrayal could justify Hobbart's actions. They presented the evidence in painstaking detail: photos of the crime scene, forensic reports, and Hobbart's own confession. The jury, visibly uncomfortable, listened as the prosecution recounted the events leading up to Lana's death. Hobbart's testimony was the most emotionally charged moment of the trial. He described, in heart-wrenching detail, the moment he discovered Lana's betrayal. His voice cracked as he recounted the confrontation, his anger giving way to regret and sorrow. "I loved her," he said, tears streaming down his face. "Even after everything, I loved her. And now she's gone because of me." The jury deliberated for days, torn between sympathy for Hobbart's circumstances and the undeniable fact that he had taken a life. In the end, he was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 15 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 10. As Hobbart was led away in handcuffs, he turned to Lana's family, mouthing the words "I'm sorry." The students involved in the campus fight also faced legal consequences. Peter and Michael, the primary aggressors, were charged with assault and sentenced to community service and probation. Jesse, whose role had been more passive, received counseling and was allowed to return to his studies under strict conditions. Ryan, who had been critically injured, eventually recovered but chose to transfer to another college, unable to move past the trauma of the incident. Jaden, the student who had exposed Lana's actions, became a controversial figure. Some hailed him as a hero for bringing the truth to light, while others blamed him for the chaos that followed. Jaden himself struggled with the weight of his decision. In interviews, he expressed a mix of pride and regret. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he said. "But I never imagined it would end like this." For the college community, the scandal became a cautionary tale, a reminder of how unchecked desires and hidden secrets can spiral into devastating consequences. Faculty and students alike were forced to confront uncomfortable truths about power dynamics, accountability, and the importance of speaking up. As the years passed, the memory of the scandal lingered. The college gradually rebuilt its reputation, but the scars remained. Alumni events were haunted by whispers of the scandal, and the gym where the fight had occurred was quietly renovated and renamed. For those who had lived through it, the events were a painful chapter they could never fully close. Hobbart, from his prison cell, spent his days writing letters to Lana's family, to the students she had hurt, and to himself. In one letter, he wrote, "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I hope, one day, the people I've hurt can find peace. Because I don't think I ever will." The tragedy of Lana's scandal and its aftermath served as a stark reminder of the fragility of trust and the devastating ripple effects of betrayal. For those at the center of the storm, the scars would never fully heal. But perhaps, in the wreckage, there was a chance to rebuild, to learn, to grow, and to ensure that such a tragedy would never happen again. The aftermath of the scandal left lasting marks on everyone involved, each person carrying the weight of their choices and their roles in the tragedy. Hobbart, now serving his prison sentence, spent much of his time reflecting on the moment his life unraveled. He penned numerous letters to Lana's family, seeking to express his remorse. "I'll never forgive myself for what I did," he wrote in one letter. "Not only did I lose her, but I destroyed everything we had built together. I live with that every day." For Hubbard, prison became a place of painful introspection. He kept to himself, declining invitations to join social groups within the prison. Instead, he spent his days reading books about grief and forgiveness, writing in a tattered journal, and attending therapy sessions offered by the prison staff. Through these sessions, Hubbard began to unravel the layers of betrayal and pain that had consumed him, though he often admitted that healing felt impossible. The students who had been entangled in the scandal also faced their own journeys of reflection. Peter, who had been one of Lana's favorites and later a central figure in the violent altercation on campus, struggled with deep-seated anger and confusion. "I thought she cared about me," he admitted during a counseling session. "But now I see I was just another piece in her game. I let her manipulate me, and then I let my anger take over." Peter's probation required him to complete community service, which he chose to fulfill by speaking to high school students about the dangers of power imbalances in relationships. Michael and Jesse, who had been caught in the web of both the scandal and the campus fight, similarly faced the long road to recovery. Michael threw himself into therapy, grappling with feelings of guilt over Ryan's injuries and his own role in the chaos. Jesse, though quieter about his emotions, took up journaling, finding solace in putting his thoughts onto paper. Both students transferred to other colleges, hoping for a fresh start. Ryan's recovery was perhaps the most visible. His physical injuries from the fight required months of rehabilitation. Emotionally, he struggled with nightmares and anxiety, often reliving the moments behind the gym. Despite these challenges, Ryan found a sense of purpose in advocating for mental health resources on college campuses. He partnered with nonprofit organizations, sharing his story as a cautionary tale and urging schools to create environments where students felt safe speaking up about abuse and misconduct. Jaden, the student who had exposed Lana's actions, became an unlikely figure of controversy. While some praised him for his bravery in bringing the truth to light, others vilified him, blaming him for the sequence of events that followed. Jaden himself felt conflicted. "I wanted to do the right thing," he said in a televised interview. "But I never thought it would lead to this. I didn't think people would get hurt, or that lives would be lost." Despite the mixed reactions, Jaden's actions sparked important conversations about accountability and the power dynamics in educational institutions. Universities across the country began re-evaluating their policies, implementing stricter guidelines for faculty-student interactions, and creating anonymous reporting systems to address misconduct. These changes, while significant, were bittersweet for Jaden, who struggled with the unintended consequences of his actions. The college itself became a symbol of caution, its name forever associated with the scandal. Enrollment numbers plummeted in the years following the incident, and the administration worked tirelessly to rebuild its reputation. New leadership took over, vowing to prioritize transparency and ethical behavior. A memorial garden was created on campus to honor those affected by the tragedy, though it became a somber reminder of the events that had unfolded. The broader community, too, grappled with the aftermath. Lana's family, torn between grief and anger, avoided public discussions about the scandal, choosing instead to mourn in private. Neighbors who had once admired Lana and Hubbard now whispered about their downfall, their lives reduced to cautionary tales. For many, the tragedy served as a reminder of the dangers of unchecked desires and the importance of addressing issues before they spiraled out of control. Over time, the lessons of the scandal began to take root. Support groups for victims of abuse and misconduct gained traction, offering a safe space for individuals to share their stories. Schools and universities nationwide began prioritizing ethics training for staff and students, emphasizing the importance of boundaries and the consequences of crossing them. While these changes couldn't undo the past, they provided a glimmer of hope for a better future. For Hubbard, the years in prison passed slowly. He continued writing letters, though he rarely received responses. His journal became a place of reflection and self-reckoning. In one entry, he wrote, "I thought the worst pain was losing Lana. But the real pain is knowing I'm the reason she's gone. I can't change what I've done, but I hope I can one day find a way to make amends." The characters involved in the scandal each carried their scars in different ways, their lives forever altered by the events that had unfolded. For some, there was a path to redemption, a chance to learn, grow, and create positive change from their pain. For others, the wounds remained raw, a constant reminder of what had been lost. In the end, the scandal became more than just a story of betrayal and tragedy. It was a reflection of human flaws and the devastating ripple effects of unchecked emotions. It served as a stark warning about the importance of accountability, the dangers of power imbalances, and the necessity of addressing issues before they spiraled out of control. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Together, we can make a difference.